What happens when one of Britain's most beloved actors sits down for what should be a routine interview and finds himself under attack from a host determined to make headlines at any cost? Today we're diving into the moment Colin Firth, known for his composed demeanor and gentleman's reputation, reached his absolute breaking point on live television. This wasn't just another celebrity interview gone wrong. This was a masterclass in how not to treat your guests, and the explosive reaction that followed will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about daytime television. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below because you're not going to believe what unfolds here. The tension starts building from the very first question and escalates into something nobody saw coming. Colin Firth walked onto The View set that Tuesday morning, expecting to discuss his latest film, a period drama that had been generating significant awards buzz. The promotional tour had been going smoothly, with interviews focusing on his craft, his preparation for the role, and his thoughts on the historical significance of the story. He settled into his chair with his characteristic quiet confidence, adjusting his jacket and offering that familiar, understated smile to the audience. Joy Behar, however, had other plans entirely. "So Colin," Joy began, leaning forward with a predatory gleam in her eyes, "before we talk about your little movie, I have to ask about something that's been bothering me. You British actors come over here, take roles from American actors, make millions of dollars, and then go back home and criticize our country. Don't you think that's a bit hypocritical?" The studio fell silent. This wasn't the planned opening question, and everyone could sense it. Colin's expression shifted almost imperceptibly, his polite smile faltering for just a moment before he composed himself. "I'm sorry, I'm not sure I understand the premise of your question," Colin replied, his voice measured but with a slight edge. "I've never criticized America as a whole, and I certainly don't view my work here as taking anything from anyone. Acting is a collaborative art form that transcends national boundaries." Joy waved her hand dismissively. "Oh, please, don't give me that diplomatic nonsense. You've been quoted multiple times being critical of American politics, American culture. You come here, you take our money, and then you lecture us. Isn't that exactly what colonialism looks like in the modern era?" The other hosts exchanged uncomfortable glances. This was clearly not the direction anyone had expected the interview to take, and the tension in the studio was becoming palpable. Colin straightened in his chair, his jaw tightening slightly. "I think you're conflating several different things," Colin said, his British accent becoming more pronounced as his composure began to crack. "Having opinions about political policies, which any citizen of the world is entitled to have, is not the same as attacking a culture or a people. And suggesting that my work here constitutes some form of cultural colonialism is not only inaccurate, but frankly insulting." "Insulting?" Joy's voice rose, clearly enjoying the reaction she was getting. "What's insulting is coming into someone's house, eating their food, and then complaining about the cooking. You've made millions in Hollywood, Colin. Millions. And then you go back to your fancy London life and tell everyone how awful we are." "I have never, ever said anything of the sort." Colin's voice remained controlled, but there was steel in it now. "I've been nothing but grateful for the opportunities I've had to work with incredibly talented American actors, directors, and crews. If you're going to make accusations like this, I'd appreciate it if you could provide specific examples rather than dealing in generalities and mischaracterizations." The camera caught the moment perfectly, zooming in on Colin's face as his famous composure began to show cracks. His hands, usually so relaxed and gesticulating naturally when he spoke, were now gripping the arms of his chair. "Oh, you want specifics?" Joy leaned back with a satisfied smirk. "How about that interview you gave to The Guardian, where you called American political discourse increasingly primitive? Or when you said our healthcare system was morally bankrupt? Ring any bells?" Colin's face flushed slightly, but his voice remained steady. "Context matters, Joy. Those comments were made in response to specific questions about specific policies, not sweeping judgments about American people or culture. And frankly, I stand by those observations. Having an opinion about healthcare policy is not an attack on America." "See, there you go again." Joy's voice was getting shriller now, clearly feeling like she had him on the defensive. "You can't help yourself, can you? Even when you're called out, you double down." "I stand by those observations," she mimicked his accent mockingly. "How generous of you to stand by your insults." The studio audience was completely silent now, watching this train wreck unfold in real time. The other hosts looked like they wanted to be anywhere else, but Joy was clearly in her element, feeding off the conflict she had created. They weren't insults, Colin said, his voice dropping to a dangerous quiet. They were observations made by someone who cares deeply about social justice and human welfare. If you want to characterize compassion as an attack, that says more about you than it does about me. Joy's eyes lit up. She had found her opening. Compassion? She laughed, a harsh sound that echoed through the studio. Is that what we're calling it now? Compassion? You sit. Colin's hands slowly released their grip on the chair arms, and for a moment, the studio held its collective breath. When he spoke again, his voice was different, colder, with an edge that cut through the air like a blade. Playing dress-up? Colin repeated slowly, each word deliberate and precise. Is that how you view the craft that I've dedicated my entire adult life to? The same craft that has allowed me to bring stories to life that matter to people, stories that explore the human condition, stories that actually contribute something meaningful to the world? Joy sensed she might have pushed too far, but doubled down anyway. Oh, spare me the noble artist routine, Colin. At the end of the day, you're paid to pretend to be other people. Let's not act like you're curing cancer here. And what exactly do you do? Colin's voice was rising now, his famous restraint finally beginning to crack. You sit behind this desk every day and tear people down for entertainment. You invite guests onto your show under the pretense of having a conversation, and then you ambush them with personal attacks and inflammatory accusations. Tell me, Joy, what exactly is your contribution to society? The other hosts were frozen, clearly wanting to intervene but not knowing how. The camera operators continued filming, knowing they were capturing television gold, even if it was uncomfortable to watch. Joy's face was reddening now, her own composure slipping. My contribution? I hold people accountable. I ask the tough questions that other people are afraid to ask. I don't let celebrities waltz in here and get free publicity without challenging them. Challenging them? Colin let out a laugh, but there was no humor in it. Is that what you call this? Because from where I'm sitting, this feels more like a coordinated character assassination. You've taken comments out of context, attributed motivations to me that don't exist, and now you're dismissing my entire profession as if it's somehow beneath your lofty standards of journalism. Don't lecture me about journalism, Joy snapped back. I've been doing this longer than you've been making movies. Then act like it, Colin shot back, his voice sharp enough to cut glass. Professional journalists ask questions to elicit information and create understanding. They don't create false narratives and then attack their guests for refusing to validate them. What you're doing isn't journalism, it's performance art. And frankly, it's not very good performance art. The studio audience was completely silent now, watching this verbal battle unfold with the kind of fascination usually reserved for car accidents. Joy's face was getting redder by the second, and her voice was rising to match Colin's intensity. How dare you come on my show and tell me how to do my job? Joy's voice was approaching a shriek now. You're a guest here, Colin, a guest. Show some respect. Respect? Colin stood up now, his tall frame towering over the desk. You want to talk about respect? You invited me here to discuss my work, and instead you've spent the last 10 minutes attacking my character, my integrity, and my profession. You've shown me no respect from the moment I sat down, so don't you dare lecture me about respect now. One of the other hosts, clearly desperate to defuse the situation, tried to jump in. Maybe we should take a commercial break and… No, Joy cut her off sharply, her eyes never leaving Colin's. We're not taking a break. Mr. Firth here seems to have something he wants to get off his chest. Please, Colin, continue. Tell us all how unfairly you've been treated. Colin stared at her for a long moment, and when he spoke again, his voice was deadly quiet. You know what, Joy? You're right. I do have something I want to get off my chest. I've been doing interviews for over 20 years, and in all that time, I have never, not once, encountered someone who seemed so determined to create conflict where none existed. You didn't invite me here for an interview. You invited me here to be your punching bag. That's ridiculous, Joy protested, but her voice lacked conviction now. Is it? Colin leaned forward, placing his hands on the desk. Let me ask you something. Did you watch my film before today? Did you research my actual quotes and their context? Did you prepare any questions about the work I'm here to promote? Or did you just decide that attacking a guest would make for better television than actually having a conversation? Joy opened her mouth to respond, but Colin wasn't finished. Because here's what I think happened, Colin continued, his voice gaining momentum. I think you decided before I even walked in here that you were going to create a moment. You were going to be the tough host who took down the pretentious British actor. You constructed a narrative in your head about who I am and what I represent, and you didn't let little things like facts or fairness get in the way of that narrative. You're being paranoid, Joy said, but she was clearly rattled now. Am I? Colin's laugh was bitter. Then explain to me why every single question you've asked has been designed to put me on the defensive. Explain to me why you've mischaracterized every statement I've ever made about policy as an attack on American people. Explain to me why you've reduced my entire career to playing dress-up, while simultaneously expecting me to sit here and smile politely while you tear me apart. The camera caught everything, the beads of sweat forming on Joy's forehead, the way her hands were trembling slightly as she shuffled her notes, the complete silence from the other hosts who clearly wanted no part of this battle. I'm doing my job, Joy said weakly. No, Colin said firmly. You're hiding behind your job. There's a difference between holding someone accountable and creating a hostile environment for your own entertainment. And the fact that you can't see that difference is exactly the problem. Joy's composure was completely gone now. You don't get to come on my show and attack me, Colin. This is my house. Then maybe you should learn how to treat your guests with basic human decency in your house, Colin fired back. Because what you've done here today isn't journalism. It isn't entertainment, and it certainly isn't professional. It's cruel. It's small, and frankly, it's beneath you. The words landed like physical blows, and Joy's face went through several. How dare you? Joy's voice was trembling with fury now, her carefully constructed television persona completely shattered. How dare you sit there and psychoanalyze me like you know anything about what I do or why I do it? You think because you played a few kings and prime ministers on screen that somehow makes you an expert on real life? Colin remained standing, his posture rigid but controlled. I don't claim to be an expert on anything except my own experience, which includes being systematically attacked by someone who clearly had no intention of having an honest conversation from the moment I walked through that door. Attacked? Joy's voice hit a pitch that made several crew members wince. You think this is an attack? I asked you legitimate questions about your public statements, and you can't handle being challenged, so now you're throwing a tantrum like a spoiled child. Legitimate questions? Colin's composure finally snapped completely. Joy, you opened this interview by accusing me of cultural colonialism. You suggested that my entire career is somehow theft from American actors. You mocked my accent, dismissed my profession, and then had the audacity to claim you were practicing journalism. If that's your idea of legitimate questioning, then I genuinely feel sorry for every guest who's ever sat in this chair. The other hosts were exchanging panicked glances now, clearly realizing that this situation was spiraling completely out of control. One of them made another attempt to intervene. Maybe we should all just take a step back here and, she began. No. Joy cut her off again, her eyes blazing with anger. I want to hear what Mr. High and Mighty here has to say. Please, Colin, continue telling us all how terrible I am at my job. I'm sure the audience is fascinated by your expert analysis. Colin stared at her for a long moment, and when he spoke again, his voice was ice cold. You know what, Joy? You're right. Let me tell the audience exactly what I think about how you do your job, because they deserve to know what kind of person they're watching every day. The studio fell into complete silence. Even the camera operators seemed to be holding their breath. I think, Colin began, his words measured and deliberate, that you've built a career on being cruel. You've convinced yourself that cruelty is the same thing as honesty, and that attacking people is the same thing as holding them accountable. You hide behind the banner of journalism to justify behavior that would be unacceptable in any other professional setting. Joy's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water, but no sound came out. I think, Colin continued, gaining momentum, that you've forgotten that the people who come on this show are human beings with feelings, with dignity, with the right to be treated with basic respect. Instead, you treat them like targets in some twisted game where the goal is to see how much damage you can inflict before they fight back. You're out of line, Joy managed to stammer, but her voice had lost all its earlier fire. Am I? Colin's voice rose again. Because from where I'm standing, everything I've said is demonstrably true. You've spent the last 15 minutes proving every single point I've made. You've shown this audience exactly who you are, Joy, and it's not someone who deserves the platform you've been given. The camera caught everything in excruciating detail. Joy's face cycling through embarrassment, rage, and something that looked almost like fear. The other hosts were frozen, clearly having no idea how to handle a situation that had gone this far off the rails. I've been doing this show for years, Joy said weakly, as if longevity somehow justified her behavior. And that makes it worse, not better, Colin shot back. You've had years to learn how to treat people with dignity, and you've chosen not to. You've had years to understand the responsibility that comes with having a platform like this, and you've squandered it on cheap shots and manufactured controversy. Joy was visibly shaking now, whether from anger or humiliation. It was impossible to tell. You don't know what you're talking about. You don't know the pressures of live television, the demands of creating compelling content day after day. Compelling content? Colin let out a laugh that had no warmth in it whatsoever. Is that what you call this? Joy, what you've created here today isn't compelling, it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing for you, it's embarrassing for this show, and it's embarrassing for everyone who has to watch it. One of the other hosts finally found her voice. Colin, maybe we should. No. Colin turned to address her directly. I appreciate what you're trying to do, but I think it's important that this conversation reaches its natural conclusion. Because what's happening here is bigger than just one bad interview. This is about the culture of daytime television, the culture of manufactured outrage, the culture of treating guests like props in some elaborate performance piece, rather than as human beings. He turned back to Joy, who was now slumped in her chair, looking smaller than she had at the beginning of the interview. You want to know what real journalism looks like, Joy? Real journalism involves preparation, research, good faith questions designed to elicit interesting information. Real journalism means treating your subjects with respect, even when you disagree with them. Real journalism means being willing to have your own assumptions challenged, not just using your platform to reinforce your existing prejudices. Joy tried one last time to regain control. I don't have to sit here and listen to this from some actor who thinks he's better than everyone else. You're right, Colin said simply. You don't have to sit here and listen to this. But if you choose to walk away, if you choose to end this conversation rather than engage with the legitimate criticisms I'm raising, then you'll be proving every single point I've made about your character and your professionalism. The challenge hung in the air like a gauntlet thrown down. Joy looked around the studio, at her co-hosts, at the crew, at the cameras, clearly realizing that she was trapped. Walking away would look like an admission of guilt, but staying meant continuing to endure Colin's systematic dismantling of her approach to hosting. I'm not going anywhere, Joy said, but her voice lacked conviction. Good, Colin said, settling back into his chair with a calm that was somehow more devastating than his earlier anger. Then let's have the conversation you should have started with. Let's talk about my film, about the historical period it explores, about the themes it addresses. Let's have the kind of substantive discussion that your audience deserves, instead of the cheap theatrics you seem to prefer. Joy stared at him, clearly at a complete loss. The woman who had started the interview with such aggressive confidence was now faced with a guest who had not only refused to be intimidated, but had turned the tables completely. Joy began, then stopped, shuffling through her notes as if looking for a lifeline. Your film, it's about the complexity of moral choices in times of crisis, Colin said gently, his voice now completely professional. It's about how ordinary people can find themselves in extraordinary circumstances and have to decide what they're willing to sacrifice for their principles. It's about the cost of integrity in a world that often rewards compromise. The irony of his description wasn't lost on anyone in the studio. Joy's face went through several colors as she realized how perfectly Colin's film description applied to what had just happened between them. The character I play, Colin continued, his voice steady and informative, is a man who refuses to back down when confronted with institutional pressure to abandon his beliefs. He's willing to pay the personal cost of standing up for what he knows is right, even when it would be easier to just go along with the system. Another loaded silence filled the studio. Joy opened her mouth several times but seemed unable to form words. It's a timely story, Colin added, looking directly at Joy, about the importance of maintaining your integrity even when you're being pressured to compromise it. About the difference between real courage and the illusion of toughness. About understanding that having power comes with responsibility. Joy finally found her voice, though it was barely above a whisper. It sounds very interesting. It is, Colin said simply. I hope people will go see it and draw their own conclusions about its relevance to our current moment. The interview limped to its conclusion with a few more perfunctory questions about Colin's preparation for the role and his thoughts on the historical period. But everyone in the studio knew that the real drama had already played out and that what they had witnessed was something unprecedented in daytime television history. As the show went to commercial break, Colin stood up, straightened his jacket, and walked off the set without another word. Joy remained. What did you think of Colin Firth's response to Joy Behar's aggressive questioning? Did he go too far, or was his reaction completely justified? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and make sure to subscribe for more incredible moments from live television that you won't believe actually happened.